I'm joined now by Senator Brian Schatz. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
So we have seen a lot of failed votes in the Senate to reopen the government right now, and that's because Senate Democrats are holding the line and not allowing Republicans to reopen the government and have this continuing resolution without sacrificing the little leverage that we do have in terms of getting these ACA subsidies, Affordable Care Act subsidies, preserved so that people's health care doesn't double, triple, quadruple heading into 2026. Can you give a lay of the land in terms of whether your Republican colleagues are recognizing that this is not a smart moral or political stance for them to be taking, and that the vast majority of Americans are actually against their position here? I mean, they're representing the 22% of Americans who don't think that these ACA subsidies should be continued.
Yeah, I don't think they quite understood how serious this problem was. And a bunch of people I mentioned that online, and people were like, come on, they knew exactly what they were doing. And I'm like, don't give them that much credit. They were just doing a Trump thing. Trump demanded
Yeah.
that they pass the big, beautiful bill. He called it a big, beautiful bill. It was branded as repealing Obamacare, which is sort of an article of faith among Republicans. And but now they're seeing these premiums increase. And, part of it was like, we're screaming, hey, man, you're going to double the premiums for 22 million Americans, most of whom are Republicans. And they just thought we were kind of like using a talking point. But now the letters are going out to tell people your rates are up. And so it is starting to sink in two things. First, that this is a real crisis. It's not something we just like went into a lab with some strategists and pollsters to try to figure out what to fight about.
Right.
This is the thing that is the most urgent crisis in terms of the cost of living for people in the United States of America. I mean, the price of vegetables is up 39%. The price of coffee is up 29%, 20%. The price of electricity is now rising at double the rate of inflation, and now this. And so this is a place where we can take a stand and make a difference. That's number one. Number two is, I think they just thought that we weren't all that serious about it. And they thought that it was going to be a replay of March. But it's not March. The sort of parade of horribles that they were contemplating, they basically went through with everything prior to the shutdown anyway. So this idea, hey, if you don't watch out, we're going to like cut things from Democratic states. And all of us are looking at each other going, yeah, you're doing that right now.
Right.
And,
Right.
And I also think the threat to lay off hundreds of thousands of federal workers who are disproportionately veterans, the threat to not give them back pay, all of that has backfired sort of in Republican world, but also with the general public where, there's a beltway argument about a clean CR versus a 7-week versus a 4-week and all that stuff. But the truth is people are smarter than all of that. Sure, they're not paying super granular attention to every detail, but they know one thing. Donald Trump is in charge of Washington, and when things are fucked up, it's very likely his fault.
Well, there are going to be people who see this and just say, from a raw political perspective. So let's put the moral, the human argument completely to the side, and just say from a raw political perspective, the hill that Republicans are looking to die on is to continue into 2026, an election year, which is a referendum on the party in power, trying to allow healthcare costs to double, triple, quadruple, or just be or people lose their healthcare entirely. And so if they are so hell-bent on exacting this kind of pain on people, their own constituents included, in fact, disproportionately their own constituents. In the last 5 years, we've seen the states that have adopted ACA enrollment are much redder than blue states. But why not just let them?
I mean, that's listen, I'm not that cynical. I'm just not. But I've certainly made that argument. Like, if we were a little more cynical, we just let you stew in this and say, you just did a super unpopular thing. I wish you the very best. But, like us or not, think we're, not strong enough or whatever. We actually really care about tens of millions of Americans being thrown off their health care. We really care about Medicaid being destroyed and rural hospitals getting crushed. Like, we're very worried about what's about to happen to Americans, and we're trying to fix it. The other thing I'd say is that, in the run up to the midterms, when we actually did save the Affordable Care Act, the same argument was made. Why don't we just let them do it? Because that'll make us stronger in the midterms. And the truth was, we saved the Affordable Care Act And then we still ran on them trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act
Right.
and had a very good midterm. So I think we can do the right thing and the smart political thing. And in this case, they are very much aligned.
And so, talk to me about what your Republican colleagues, what you've heard from your Republican colleagues right now. Is there some sense of uncertainty at the path that they're on right now? Have you heard anything, any rumblings from the Republican side in terms of, not just the political ramifications here? I mean, the polling ramifications here, and the consequences on their own states, their own districts.
The answer is sure, rumblings. But this all is going to go through Donald John Trump. Mike Johnson in particular is not going to make a move without him. And, we saw him on TV. We saw him shut down the House for 3 weeks unexpectedly. And so my view is, we can negotiate with rank and file Republicans, but that's not quite a waste of time. But that's not the way to get to a resolution of this challenge. So, they are basically totally servile to him.
Yeah.
Even the people who like to do negotiations, that are experienced legislators, that are not MAGA in their core, they've basically given up on being independent. And so it's not like we're going to get a cohort of people to work with Democrats to get this done, unless Donald Trump views this as a sufficient liability. And I think that's where, your podcast and the work of activists out there really comes to be critical, because until they realize that this is not a Democrats versus Republicans issue, until they realize that it is their constituents that they are harming, I think they're not going to back down. It is starting to sink in how serious we are about this and how real this problem is, but I don't think they're there yet.
Can you say with any degree of confidence that Democrats are going to be? I mean, I know that there have been a few defections in terms of Democratic senators offering up their vote to Republicans for this clean CR. What I would suggest is a naive belief that the same people who took these subsidies away are then somehow going to voluntarily end up at the negotiating table. But that notwithstanding, is there any sense of how united the Democratic caucus is in terms of not capitulating to the Republicans here?
Well, as deputy whip, I take the counting part super seriously. So every day is a new whip. Every day is a new assessment of, where everyone's head is at. But I will say we feel pretty unified right now. Now, I do think that, part of what we have to do, and, Brian, you and I talked about this after we lost the election, that we have to kind of have grown-up conversations with activists about, okay, what are we trying to achieve here, right? And what is a realistic path to try to achieve something? And I think if the standard is that we don't reopen the government until all the fascism stops, right? Then we're just literally never going to reopen the government, because Donald Trump is going to, try to indict Letitia James and try to jail, James Comey and J.B. Pritzker and all the rest of it. So we have to be ratcheting up some wins here. But we also have to be in a position where people should not expect nothing from us. And I think the frustration from March was that we gave away something for nothing. But on the other hand, we have to understand that this is an incremental process, that inserting ourselves into the legislative process to get a W is a really important first step. But we're not going to solve all the world's problems through however this shutdown ends. We're going to try to solve some very significant problems. I think the most significant among them, that we are no longer irrelevant to Republicans in the legislative process. And as a check against this, wannabe authoritarian, that's a super important step. But I also want to just tell everybody, however this ends, even if it ends in the most optimistic scenario, it will not fix everything. And it will not even fix a third of what needs to get fixed, but it will be a step in the right direction.
Right. I mean, look, a step in the right direction is even underselling the fact that 24 million Americans will have continued access to affordable health care. And if we didn't have that small win, and I mean, yes, it is a small win in the grand scheme of things, but if we didn't have that is life and death for millions upon millions of Americans right now. So with that said, I want to ask one more question if we have a quick beat, and that is just your initial reaction to the news that just broke that Donald Trump has indicted Letitia James for something that even his previously appointed U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia did not think there was any justification to indict her for.
Yeah, it's malicious prosecution. It's very similar to what just happened with James Comey. They couldn't find a career prosecutor to bring the case. I think this one might even be even more thin in the sense that it's mortgage fraud
Yeah.
and just a very like goofy charge. So I have no doubt that she'll be exonerated. I wouldn't be surprised if it got kicked way before a trial. So I think there's two ways to look at this, right? One is that Donald Trump is doing authoritarian things. The other is that Donald Trump has not yet succeeded to become an authoritarian ruler. And I think that in the interest for people, there are a bunch of people who want the rest of the United States to be sufficiently alarmed. And so we talk about the United States of America like we've already crossed some Rubicon and we're already at the bottom of the hill and authoritarianism is here. And I don't think that's the right way to look at this. I think we have to view Trump as a very serious threat to the American experiment, a very serious threat to our freedoms. But when we push back and use the judicial system, we have been winning. I think Gavin Newsom in California has demonstrated that both in the judicial process and in this redistricting process, that we are not without tools. I think what the people in Portland are doing in terms of peaceful prison demonstrations is very clever and smart. I think J.B. Pritzker is a good example. I think, frankly, when Brendan Carr tried to, basically gut the First Amendment, that Ted Cruz stepping up was an enormously important thing. So we're not without tools here. And so two things are true at the same time. One is Donald Trump would absolutely become an authoritarian permanent ruler if he could. Yeah. The other is that we're pretty long way from that as long as we all are disciplined and smart and together and fight like hell.
Good place to leave off. Senator, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.